The laughter started before she even reached the stage. It echoed across the small community hall, bouncing off the peeling yellow walls and the flickering fluorescent lights. People whispered behind their hands, shaking their heads as the thin girl in the oversized coat walked toward the microphone with an old violin clutched to her chest. She looked no older than 14. Her shoes were worn. Her sleeves were too long. And the violin case looked like it had been rescued from a trash pile, but the way she held it, it was as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Please," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "Just let me play for 5 minutes." The organizer sighed loudly. The event was a city talent showcase, meant for polished performers, singers with managers, dancers with expensive costumes. "Not for a desperate girl who had clearly wandered in from the street." "Sweetheart," he said impatiently, "the sign-up list is closed." "I know," she whispered. "But I need the prize money." That made a few people laugh. Someone from the back called out, "Join the line with the rest of us." More chuckles spread through the room. Her fingers tightened around the violin. "My brother is sick," she said softly. "He needs surgery." For a moment, the room grew quiet, then someone muttered, "Yeah, sure." Another voice added, "Everyone's got a story." The organizer rubbed his temples. He had a full schedule and a restless crowd. "Look," he said, lowering his voice, "this is a professional event. You can't just—" "I've been playing since I was 6, she said quickly. "My mom taught me." Her words stumbled out like they were racing against time. "If I win the prize money, I can pay for the hospital. I just need 5 minutes." The prize money was $5,000, enough to save her little brother. Or at least try. The organizer looked at the audience. Some people rolled their eyes. Others stared at their phones. A man near the front snorted. "Let her play. Could be good comedy." Laughter rippled again. The girl's cheeks burned, but she didn't move. She stood there, gripping her violin like a lifeline. Finally, the organizer sighed. "Fine," he said. "One song. Then we move on." The crowd clapped sarcastically. "Let's hear it, street violinist." Someone whistled mockingly. The girl nodded gratefully and stepped onto the stage. Up close, the stage lights were blinding. Her hands shook as she opened the violin case. Inside lay an instrument that had clearly lived a hard life. The wood was scratched. One corner had been glued back together. The bow's hair was uneven, but when she lifted the violin, something changed. Her shoulders straightened, her breathing steadied, the room quieted slightly. Curious now, she closed her eyes, and for a moment, she was no longer in the crowded hall filled with strangers. She was back in their tiny apartment, back in the warm kitchen where her mother used to play violin while soup simmered on the stove, back when life was simple. Back before hospitals and bills and silence filled the house. Her name was Elena, and everything she loved had been slipping away. 2 years earlier, Elena's world had shattered in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday. Her mother collapsed while practicing violin in the living room. 1 moment there was music, the next there was an ambulance. 3 days later, there was a funeral. Elena was 12. Her little brother Matteo was 8. Their father had left years before, disappearing into another city and another life. Suddenly Elena wasn't just a sister anymore, she was everything. She cooked, she cleaned, she worked small jobs after school, and every night, she played the violin her mother had left behind, not because she wanted to perform, but because it was the only thing that made the apartment feel alive again. Matteo used to sit on the couch with his blanket wrapped around him, smiling weakly. "You sound just like Mom," he would say. Elena always shook her head. "No," she'd whisper. "Not even close." But she kept playing, because it was the one promise she had made at her mother's bedside: take care of Matteo. Then 6 months ago, the headache started. Matteo complained of dizziness, then came the fainting. The hospital visit changed everything. A tumor. The doctor's voice had been calm, almost clinical. Surgery could fix it, but surgery cost money, more money than Elena had ever seen in her life. Insurance covered almost nothing. The hospital gave them 3 months. 3 months to find the impossible. Elena worked everywhere she could, cleaning tables, delivering groceries, walking dogs, but it wasn't enough, not even close. Then one night she saw a poster on a bus stop. City Talent Showcase, first prize. $5,000. Her heart pounded. $5,000. It wouldn't cover everything, but it would be enough to schedule the surgery, enough to give Mateo a chance. She practiced every night, after work, after homework. After Mateo fell asleep, her fingers blistered, her arms ached, but she kept playing. Tonight was the final audition, and she had arrived too late. Now she stood on stage while strangers waited for her to fail. The hall buzzed with impatient murmurs. Come on already. Is she gonna cry or play? Elena lifted the violin to her shoulder, the bow hovered above the strings, her heart pounded so loudly she wondered if the microphone could hear it. Then she remembered Mateo's voice that morning. You'll win, he had said weakly from the hospital bed, you always play the best songs. Her hand stopped shaking, she drew a slow breath and placed the bow on the strings. The first note rang out, clear, deep, beautiful. The laughter stopped instantly. People glanced up from their phones. The sound filled the room like sunlight through a window. Elena began to play. It wasn't a flashy performance, there were no dramatic flourishes, just a simple melody, but it carried something raw, something honest. Each note trembled with memories of her mother's laughter, of hospital hallways, of quiet promises made in the dark. The audience leaned forward without realizing it. A woman near the back wiped her eyes. The sarcastic man in the front stopped smirking. The melody grew stronger, higher, bolder. Elena poured everything into that violin, fear, hope, grief, love. Her fingers moved faster now, gliding across the strings with fierce determination. The old violin sang like it had been waiting its whole life for this moment, and suddenly the crowd understood. This wasn't a girl begging for attention, this was a girl fighting for someone she loved. The final note trembled in the air, then faded. Silence, complete silence. For 2 seconds, nobody moved. Then someone stood up, clapping. Another person followed, then another. Within moments the entire hall erupted into thunderous applause. People rose from their seats, some were crying. The organizer stared at Elena in stunned disbelief. The same crowd that had laughed at her minutes ago now cheered louder than they had for any performer that night. Elena lowered the violin slowly, her hands trembled again, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from hope. The judges huddled together, whispering intensely. Finally the organizer stepped forward, his voice was softer now. Young lady, he said, what's your name? Elena. Well, Elena, he said, smiling faintly, I think you just changed the entire night. The judges didn't even wait for the rest of the performances, they announced the winner right there. First place, $5,000. Elena. The applause returned like a storm, but Elena barely heard it. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the envelope they handed her. It felt unreal, like holding a miracle. She ran all the way to the hospital, bursting into Mateo's room out of breath. I did it, she gasped. Mateo's eyes widened. You won? She nodded, laughing through tears. We're getting your surgery. He hugged her tightly. You're the best sister in the world. 2 weeks later, the surgery was successful. Mateo recovered slowly but steadily, and Elena kept playing the violin, not for prize money, not for sympathy, but because music had saved them. Years later, Elena would stand on stages around the world. People would call her performances unforgettable, they would praise her talent, but whenever someone asked where her music came from, Elena always gave the same answer. It comes from love, she would say, because the strongest music in the world is played by someone who refuses to give up.